Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of It's a Football Thing. Except for this time, it's a special feature of It's a Chelsea Thing. And who better to have on this show to unpack the Chelsea versus Charlotte and looking forward to the pre-season fixtures that remain, as well as the transfer dealings that have currently taken place, with my good friend, fellow American Blues passionate sporting fan, and also moving into the sport reporting slash journalism game. Statman Shane. Shane, welcome on board, my friend. Tell us what you've been getting up to.
Yeah, cheers, RJ. I really appreciate you inviting me on tonight. I'm really looking forward to talking with you. It's nice, like I was telling you before we got live. It's kind of nice being on the other side of the coin, as Miz would like to say. I'm usually the one asking all the questions, so tonight I get to take a little bit of a different perspective on things, which is kind of cool. I'm looking forward to that, interacting with your listeners. But yeah, I've been at a sports broadcasting camp for the past couple of days. Trying to enhance my skills and play-by-play announcing, podcasting. Sideline reporting, journalism, anything in the sports communications umbrella, you name it, we're working on it. So I'm out here in Arizona. It's hot, but we're having a good time. But yeah, looking forward to tonight. Thanks once again for inviting me on. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. It's great to have you back on because for those that don't know, Shane, myself, and a fellow content creator, Miz, from the other side of the coin from down here in Sydney, also get together not regularly enough, but semi regularly to talk with Shane on his podcast, which I'd highly recommend. So Shane will share all of those details throughout the show, which is great. But Shane, I want to jump straight into it. And I know you didn't get to watch it in great detail of the match. I fortunately slash unfortunately did get to watch all of it because it's at the fruitful time of 10:30 a.m. Sydney time. But just some of my initial reactions from the match that I wanted to share with you, because I know you caught the tail end of it, was it was very much, from my perspective, a tale of two halves because from the first half, what I was able to gauge from the match was it was a lot more controlled from our boys. We had the classic Jovicic pairing of Mateo Kovacic and Jorginho really steadying the ship and connecting the front and back. And when I look at the starting lineup, I thought we had that experience and leadership at the back with Thiago Silva marshalling things. So another surprise inclusion of Emerson there that seems to be getting a genuine look in. Of course, my boy RJ, the real RJ, Reece James. And then you had some other players that made a surprise inclusion again. Mishi Batshuayi, Hakim Ziyech, whose careers at Chelsea is a little bit on knife's edge. And of course, the inevitable Marcus Alonso and your man, Captain America, Christian Pulisic, who got on the score sheet. Nice finish, nice tidy finish. It followed via a deflected shot from Batshuayi, but it was very instinctive, nice clipped chip into the corner. So it was great to see him get onto the score sheet in front of his home crowd. But then the second half came in, Shane, and then it was a much changed lineup. And you saw our English superstar midfielders, Mason Mount, who was captain in the squad, which was nice. Jorginho in the first half, Mason in the second half. So we might be seeing some telltale signs of what's happening there. But then him and Conor Gallagher in that midfield area, from what I could see, and perhaps I'm not sure if this resonates with yourself, mate, or other Blues fans that were watching, but we lost a lot of that stability and control and looked to change the tide of things from being possession based and methodic in our build up to really trying to be fast paced and trying to catch Charlotte in their exposed transition with the likes of Kennedy, who was bombarding up the pitch throughout that whole second half. And also Raheem Sterling. He had some wonderful touches and had some great chances, and we got some glimpses of seeing what life will be like for our newest Blue. So, just any kind of reflections you had on the match itself. And obviously, we lost in penalty shootouts, disappointing penalty kick from Conor Gallagher, but it's a low risk environment. I tend to not look too much on the outcome itself, but it wasn't the most pleasant of performances, I'll say. And it's a little bit concerning that we didn't get a little bit more polish, but I don't want to overemphasize on that because I don't want to be too dramatic. So, again, just your thoughts, mate.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, however many people have reservations about Jorginho, I think that um, that Jorginho Kovacic partnership is our best partnership currently that we have in the squad in midfield. I think it's our best season partnership. I think it's our best balanced partnership that we currently have in the squad. to help our team to victory. And I think, after they were substituted in the second half, which I got to see most of, the midfield wasn't as stout. Charlotte found themselves being able to have success in the counterattack, which an MLS team is going to be game planned for when they're kind of such a big European side like Chelsea. But I was really impressed with even Apadu, even though and there were some missed touches in the box and around the area. When Charlotte was on the attack, I think Ethan Apadu was very poised in the second half. I think he was probably the standout player of that half. Um, but Pulisic, it's what he does. He's a very instinctive player. I.e. his goal. It kind of reminded me of the one he scored against Crystal Palace on the first day of last season, where he kind of comes off a deflected shot and it's just there to put the ball into the back of the net. That's one of his best traits. So it's interesting to see Hudson-Odoi win back once again. I know he was really far forward, and sometimes he went over to the left side. But like I said, it's a lot of this stuff is preseason, and it's hard to judge, how much of this is really going to be in effect and in play once we get the season started against Everton in mid-August. So, but yeah, I wasn't the most impressed with the team. It was great to see us throwing in Chelsea yellow tonight, I should say. But yeah, I'm pleased to see that Chelsea are in America. I think it's great for the club as a whole, especially under a new American ownership. I think it's only going to grow their support over here in the United States of America. And I'm really excited for that game against Arsenal coming up in the next week or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Ethan Ampadu was one of the positive standouts. I noticed a couple of times in the second half when he was on, of course, he played some really nice clipped long balls into the space for the likes of Kennedy to exploit. And I was thinking for players or some of our more attacking based players like your Timo Werners and those that really depend on having that space to exploit, he could be a bit of an ace up Tuchel's sleeve in terms of using him in either a more of a deep line midfielders type of setup or, of course, in that three centre back system. So, look, it was quite interesting. I thought there were a couple of good link ups at times between Kovacic, Jorginho, and Bashuawi at times, and as well as between Mason, Conor, and there was one particular instance where Conor passed the ball through to Mason, and Mason clipped it through to Raheem Sterling, who had his shot expertly saved by the keeper's trailing leg. So, look, the outcome could have gone either way. That we did concede a few chances, an unfortunate penalty to give away right at the depth of it by Trevor Chalobah, part of his development curve. So I don't want to go bash him too much. But one player I want to sort of focus on now is one that's coming in. So, well, what we've been led to believe that is. So, obviously, Koulibaly is in, Raheem Sterling is in, and now we've got Jules Kounde, the long-awaited arrival of this superstar from Sevilla. So now it's just, from your point of view, if we can get this one over the line, Shane, what does that mean for Chelsea? What does that do to their season's ambitions? And also, what does it mean for other players in the squad, i.e. Cesar Azpilicueta? So just your thoughts on the whole Jules Kounde developments.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's pretty clear now that Cesar Azpilicueta is on his way out, not featuring in the preseason game today at all. We made, 11 subs at halftime. So, and I don't want to get too much into his situation at the moment, because the question was about Jules Kounde, but of course that obviously affects Azpilicueta in a way because, even if he does end up staying, he won't be a starter. Jules Kounde is one of the best progressive passing center backs in all of Europe. Percentile-wise, he ranks in the 98th percentile in dribbles completed, the 96th percentile in touches in the attack and penalty box, the 97th in progressive passing. We look at Koulibaly, Thiago Silva, and Kounde. That's going to be a very stout back three. You can pin balls over the top to the wing backs in Chilwell and James and cause havoc for opposition. So I'm really excited to see Jules Kounde come in. He reminds me a lot of a player like Joel Matip, where he can get inside the box and carry the ball into the opponent's area. And I'm really excited for this sign, especially because I don't think 55 million is too much of I think it's somewhat of a bargain, especially considering the fact that, he does have a release clause, I believe, of something like 75, 80 million euros. So 55 million pounds, euros, whatever it is, I think is somewhat of a bargain. And you can play that right center back role. you can play him at right back, especially if Reece James needs a rest as well. And he's been a target that we've been looking for over a year now. So I think he has shown the desire to come to Chelsea, which first and foremost is something that I'm really attracted to by the player. Even though there's, of course, that Barcelona interest, like there always is, it seems like Chelsea players nowadays. But yeah, I'm really excited about this link because Jules Kounde, he has that firepower in him. He kind of has that Antonio Rudiger shithousery in him. You saw that at the back end of last season. And I'm really excited to see what he can do coming into this Chelsea dressing room.
Yeah, no, well summarised, and I've just got the FBREF stats for Jules Kounde, and you highlighted
Favorite
some
website,
of them.
by the way, for football
Yeah,
statistics.
it just gives you some good insights, and I'm cautious. I know we love our stats here. It helps inform our judgment of players and the way we play, etc. So it should definitely be referred to. But I think what we can gauge out of looking into these, in terms of complementing the good old eye test, of course, is based on the setup we have and trying to build up from the back. It's so important that from a defender's point of view, that their style of play, that their skill set has a lot more than just being able to be a naturally strong defender. You've got to be a good progressor of the ball, and not just in terms of your accuracy, but your speed of passing and the intelligence in the way in which you distribute the ball. So I think with players like Jules Kounde, not only can he progress the ball forward. G'day, NS Sports TV, welcome aboard. But also, I think for us, what's important is that he can also use his pace to actually carry the ball himself. So it's not just about passing, it's about progressively dribbling himself. And it just gives players like Jorginho, Kante, Kovacic that extra bit of freedom to know that if you've got a setup that's man marking your midfield and you've got extra players available from a defensive perspective, then ultimately, if you can have players that are technically astute and can dribble the ball forward and can pass it, like we saw Fifa and Apadu, it just gives us that extra dimension of attacking capability. So I think if we can finally lock this one down, Shane, it's going to be a very big improvement to what we've got. And just a quick word on Cesar Azpilicueta. The guy has been a bona fide leader by example from the moment he arrived. He's not the leader by beating his crest on his chest and yelling out loud like previous captains. And that's fully fine because I love that old school leadership mentality. But I'm also a big fan of those like Cesar who let their business on the field do the talking. And essentially what we're aiming for here is if he does go, he does deserve a proper farewell. And I hope the club gives him something as a nice send-off to really pay tribute to the service and contribution that he has made over the last 8 or so years. And as a result, I think Chelsea is going to lose some intangibles in terms of the leadership. I know we've got Thiago Silva. I know that Raheem Sterling brings a certain amount of leadership from his time with England and the natural stage of his career. But I do feel like there is going to be a bit of a bridging there that we lose as a result of losing Cesar. But if his time is to go, he gets our blessing from myself at least. And I just wish him all the best because he's been a fantastic servant to the club. Just any words from yourself about our long-standing captain and if he was to go?
Well, first of all, can you hear me? My mic was kind of
Yes. No, we can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. My mic was kind of rubbish for a second right there. But yeah, I mean, I can't say enough words about Cesar Azpilicueta. I mean, he was the captain. He's been the captain for over a decade now. Close to vice captain, and a captain now for over a decade. He's been at the club. During the decade he's been with the club, and he's a silent leader, but he's also one that off the pitch exemplifies class and exemplifies leadership in the dressing room in and around the likes of Reece James. You have to remember a lot of the reason why Reece James, has succeeded at Chelsea is because he's had someone like Cesar Azpilicueta for him to mentor him and develop his talent. Because if we didn't have someone like Azpilicueta at the club, who knows what Reece James talent would have panned out to be. So he's just been a superb servant to this club. I wish him all the best, even if it does end up going to Barcelona. and he leaves a Chelsea legend. And I think we should put a statue outside the stadium for him because he's won it all, and no other Chelsea player or captain has done that. And I think he deserves all the praise that he can get from us, and I think he does deserve a peaceful exit from the club.
Well said, well said. Now, just to get a comment from NS Sports TV, not sure if you mentioned, Shane and I did unpack it at a high level, the post-match reaction versus Charlotte, but I think the theme more broadly about the preseason friendlies, and naturally there's going to be some disconcerted fans online talking about how can you lose to this team? We should be building up a bit of a rhythm. But I just want to get your thoughts, Shane, on a couple of upcoming preseason fixtures. So we've got the old enemy in Arsenal coming up on the weekend. So for those that follow the channel, so if you haven't had a chance, hit the subscribe button and follow our show because we stream twice a week with my good friends Rob the Red Devil and Scott the Gooner. But Chelsea versus Arsenal on the weekend, then we've got Udinese after that. When you look at the last two matches, so this one against Charlotte, not a great result or outcome, a very mixed performance, some good elements, like we saw with some shining lights in terms of Raheem Sterling getting involved. It's good to have players like Ampadu and Conor Gallagher building up some momentum. And then you also had the youngsters like Levi Colwill get a go. And what I will say is I want him to be given an opportunity, but he had a bit of a mixed performance, which is understandable for a youngster trying to impress. But also now when you consider the matches coming up from Arsenal and Udinese, what are you looking for if you're Thomas Tuchel or you're advising Thomas? What do you want to see from these two performances in particular? Notwithstanding you want to win the matches, or put that to the side. It's always nice to win. But what are some of the things that you want to try to take away from these matches before you head into the season and come back home?
I want to see a foregone plan for the upcoming season. First of all, Chelsea database. It's great to see you. If anyone doesn't end up following him on Twitter, you're missing out. So
Well
go do
said.
that right at the moment. But yeah, I think that I want to see a clear plan from Thomas Tuchel in the way that he wants to play, especially with the likes of Raheem Sterling and Koulibaly coming in. I want to see a game plan on kind of the leaders in the squad. I'm interested to see how the likes of Raheem Sterling and Koulibaly do with leadership. Their intangibles, I think, is going to serve this club really well outside of their performances on the pitch. But I want to see some more stability. I want to see players like Levi Colwill and like Conor Gallagher given more minutes than someone like a Kennedy or someone like a Ross Barkley or even someone like a Hakeem Ziyech, who most likely won't be given many minutes next year because they look like they're going to be out the door. So I want to see some more players who are going to have actually have an importance to our squad this season playing in those last two preseason games, because I think it's about time that we give the minutes to the likes of those players to get them ready for the season, because Everton is going to be a very tough opening day fixture. I mean, whether you like it or whether you think, however you might think Everton are bad or not, it's an away day. Goodison Park record has been absolutely dreadful there the past 5 years. So I think that we have to be really prepared for that match, because that would be a tough way to start out the season with a loss to Frank Lampard and the Toffees. So, yeah, I just want to see a clear game plan from Tuchel. I want to see some more minutes from the likes of the people who are actually going to be playing a role in our squad this season. And I think that, that will come to good fruition because it will get some of our players more amped up for the season.
Yeah, I think the clear game plan is something that most Chelsea fans are looking to try to identify during this time, because obviously the big question from us as a fan base is, do we go with the tried and tested three at the back, or the 3-4-3, or the 3-4-2-1? Or, knowing the midfield profile we've got, those returning like your Conor Gallagher's, who offers that more of an attacking threat, and more on Conor in a moment. It's just a question of, does Tuchel, in his mind, for the next two games, knowing that we have started with the three at the back set up and he seems to be trusting the old instincts, does he take a bit of a risk in experimentation here to try to see, okay, we've had this model. I know what I can get out of it. I know the tried and tested players, because you read his pre-match comments and he said it's really up to everybody now to stake their claim and convince me. So I'm kind of interested to see, will he give those plays on the fringe? So your Levi Colwills, your Ethan Ampedu's, your Conor Gallagher's, your Mishies to a lesser extent. I can't believe I'm saying that, but just will he be given these players genuine opportunities in terms of minutes to be able to convince him? Or is it one of those he's going to give them a bit of an opportunity just to look like he's given someone a chance, but he's already got his mind made up? So for me, I'm hoping that he continues to be a bit more experimentative before we get to Everton game, because I don't want us just to waste time thinking that we've already got a set solution when you haven't even given everybody a genuine opportunity to try to change your mind. So I'm hoping, my sort of personal preference is, I hope we try something different this season with a four at the back and try to be a little bit more risk focused in terms of the attack, because I think our defense, the defenders we're bringing in are very, very solid. Lots of experience, obviously, with Koulibaly coming in. But I'd also think with the midfield profile we've got, I would love to see people like Mason dropping a bit deeper. I would love to see people like Conor not be deployed in a pivot, but as part of a three-man midfield, knowing that you've got this insatiable amount of energy that he's got. I'd love to see him advance up the pitch and hovering in and around the edge of the box and taking shots, because we know he's got that in his locker. So I'm hoping for the remaining two games, we do see some more attacking based experimentation. But like you said as well, Shane, I don't want to see players that on the face of it don't have a real strong future. So people like your Ross Barkley's I'm calling out. Your Hakim Ziyech is an interesting one, because I do feel like his time is slowly coming to an end. But if this transfer market doesn't work out the way we want it to, it's very possible that he stays on board. And with that, if we do go with a four at the back and play a 4-3-3, he is someone that can play an attacking right, and he's someone that can provide that bit of X factor, because some of the passes he's been delivering and the crosses, he could be someone that we don't want to give up too soon on. So it is interesting to see, but I'm just going to bring up this comment from Ken Berry. So can't help but say it, but half of football starting to put our attackers to shame. Hopefully they now remember. So, well, it was a good point, Ken, because we saw in a couple of moments where he dropped a bit deeper and he used his vision to either play someone like Kennedy into space, or like that move we brought up before where Conor played it to Mason, and his movement when he outran the defender and he had his shot expertly saved. I think Raheem Sterling's going to really help elevate the players of those around him. I am concerned for players like Callum Hudson-Odoi, who didn't really take these past couple of games by the scruff of the neck and really show that this guy, he's more than just potential, but he's someone that deserves to be given a proper opportunity to impress. So I'm really hoping he does use these next couple of games to really step it up. In terms of you said the Everton game. I know Everton have had a struggling preseason themselves, but we've always had a difficult time up against Everton, especially at Goodison Park. It's going to be interesting to see how they approach the game, knowing that we are the superior opposition, quote unquote. But you just never know. And especially if we've got some uncertainty leading up into that first game, I could see that being a bit of a curveball. But I don't want to go too far into that. I want to talk to you now, Shane, to sort of heading to descend mode from a transfer perspective. So we've got Koulibaly, we've got Sterling. Kounde looks like he's going to happen, fingers crossed, unless Barcelona swoop in on the 11th hour again like the League of Shadows. But who else now? Like, are you switching your attention to more so the incomings or more so the outgoings? Just talk us through. You're on the Chelsea board. What do you want to see for the last remaining period?
I think, unfortunately, we have gotten to a situation now where all of our midfield targets have gone to different clubs, whether that be rival or European rival or domestic rival clubs, which is unfortunate. It seems like Declan Rice is very unrealistic to happen this summer. Of course, he's my number one target, and I think he is for most Chelsea fans. But yeah, I would put my focus and attention on the outgoings, because I think Bowley wants to have a self-sustaining model at Chelsea, and I think he's seen these players that are being paid over £100,000 a week. You look at the likes of Ross Barkley, Kennedy, Michy Batshuayi. I mean, all those guys are getting paid over 100K a week. more than the likes of Mason Mount and Reece James, which is just nuts if you really think about it at the moment. So I think Bully, he's an analytic driven owner. He knows that these guys probably need to be outdoor, and I think that's probably why Thomas Tuchel is giving some of these guys minutes, is to kind of show they case them for a different club, so we can kind of get them at least off our wage books for the season. Hopefully, it's the wage books for the rest of their careers. Especially when you talk to the likes of Kennedy and Michy Batshuayi and Ross Barkley, who are all getting paid over. Once again, they're all getting paid over £100,000 a week by us. So yeah, I would focus my attention on the outgoings, because I think January is going to be a market where maybe we have some leverage and some extra money to spend from those outgoings, especially when you look at the likes of, Azpilicueta, and hopefully we can get a decent amount of fee for someone like Marcus Alonso. And, Michy Batshuayi is still a Belgium international, so I'd be surprised if someone like a Genk came in for him. And yeah, I would focus on the players that are coming back from loan, the likes of Conor Gallagher, the likes of Ethan Ampadu, especially like you mentioned, Conor Gallagher. I mean, this guy is our first goal scoring threat from inside the box since Frank Lampard, if we're really truly being honest. He is one of the best pressers in all of Europe. He averages almost 25 pressures per 90. He's a goal threat inside the box. And he just brings so much energy to that midfield, which, we haven't seen it in a long, long time. And so I think, he provides that goal scoring threat. I know he missed the penalty tonight, but I'm not going to judge him too harshly on that. But yeah, I just really want to see someone like him given the chance in their best role, which I think is as an attacking 8. So I think, we need to focus on outgoings, and then maybe in the January transfer window, focus on purchasing some backup players who better fit the mold of Thomas Tuchel's system, because I think we've seen an imbalance these past couple of years, chopping and changing managers, where you have the likes of Ben Chilwell, but then when he's not playing, you have to say someone like Marcus Alonso and Emerson, who were two completely different type of prototypes. I think that's something that Liverpool, Manchester City have done a really nice job with, is, surrounding their depth with similar prototypes of players. I think that's something we need to focus on, especially in the January transfer market.
Now, well said. For me, I think what really stood out is with the new change of ownership, and can't remember which pod it was on, but it could have been Alex Goldberg's, the byline. It could have been the Londoners Blue guys. I can't recall exactly where I heard it, but I think it was on Alex's one. When the new ownership took over and the new board of directors was announced, one of the key messages is about trying to. We've all enjoyed the chaos and trophies mantra. It's been great. We've won lots. We've won it all. We're the best club in Europe and the world. But that era is beyond us now. And I think it's fair to say within that model, the one thing that you wouldn't associate that era was around sustainability and intelligence. So for us, we've built the infrastructure now to become an elite footballing institution. The next phase under the new ownership is really about embedding a sustainable philosophy that make sure that we can continue to not only keep the good times rolling, but make incremental improvements along the way. So I think part of that is really just taking that end-to-end view of the ground up. So from the grassroots level, from a boardroom perspective, how do you streamline your operations to be a bit more effective and efficient with the way you manage your business? And that transcends to the on-the-field spending as well. So you cut off your excess spends for players that don't demonstrate that genuine value. You don't overpay for talent in an inflated market just to pursue a short-term fix. So I think if we can progressively work to offload those players that are deemed to be excess or paid disproportionately for their perceived value, I think we're trending in the right direction. So for me, in this transfer window, I would agree with you. Let's get rid of the players that have no longer, are seen to no longer be considered genuine value adders to the squad. And let's just try to use a combination of integrating or continuing to integrate our loan talent, our academy talent, but not just that, because we all want to win. On-field success equals off-field success. But we need to have a model where, like Liverpool, they identify players in which it's not always about the big headline, but it's about those that, based on their statistical profile and cultural fit, they can be integrated into the team that benefits the collective. So look, I'm really keen to see what we do on that front. I'm a little bit torn when you get to the middle to the top end of the pitch, like players like your Timo Werners, players like your Hakim Ziyech's, because I think at the fundamental level, there's some good players in both of them. There's just a question about the profile and the square peg round hole sort of analogy. But sometimes I think that's also a combination of, does the setup and the underlying philosophy of the way we're playing really get the most out of them? So that's why I'm hoping in this preseason, and Thomas Tuchel, if he gets the players he can get, maybe can alter that setup ever so slightly, that gives these other guys another opportunity to say, do I deserve to be here, or is it best for all parties that we part way and try to move on? So look, it's quite interesting from that point of view. So just to look to round things off, Shane, I suppose just as a bit of a quick fire, mate, if you were signing the checks on behalf of Todd Bowley, so you are Todd Bowley, you're the signatory on the account, who is the one player that you would bring in now, and keep it within reason? You can't spend more than £100 million because we've already spent a whole bunch of money. So say there's one player you can bring in with that max value, and one player that you would say, thanks for your service, but now it's time to leave.
Whew, wow. For me, the one player to leave is really easy for me, and it's Timo Werner. Um, the player coming in, though, wow. Um,
So is the Timo Werner one, just while you're I'll give you some time to
mm,
think, is that because of what he's done in terms of the profile, or is it a combination of that and the wages factor? Like what's the main
yeah.
reason for Timo Werner?
For me, I think Todd Bowley's going to see that he's getting paid over £270,000 a week, and he wants to bring in some more of these defenders. And down the line, in the future, someone like Declan Rice, who's going to have to be paid a boatload of money, freeing up all this cap space, so to say, in American terms, is going to be something I think he's really going to be looking at, especially because Timo Werner, I think Matisse said the stat a couple of days ago. Maybe he scored a combined 12 goals in his first two Premier League seasons, which is just dreadful if you really look at it. I know he's had good moments in the Champions League and he's helped us influence our play um, off the ball, but I just don't see the reason why we are paying him so much money at the moment. Um, I think for the transfer fee we paid for him, he should be producing so much more. And especially the arrival of Sterling is just going to push his minutes out the door even more. So, I mean, I could be completely wrong. He could completely do a U-turn on me this summer, and I'd be super happy about that. But at the moment, I would sell Timo Werner and then bring in someone. Wow. I mean, if you would have asked me a week ago, I would have probably said someone like, I mean, even asked me a couple of months ago, I would have said something like Bubakar Kamara, um, who's now gone to Aston Villa. I think his profile is really stout. Another Premier League player now that we've let go to a rival club. Um, but yeah, I mean, all of our midfield targets are out the window now, so it's hard for me to say someone because I don't really think there's someone in the attack I really want to bring in. The defense, I guess this could be a cop out, but I would just say Kounde. I think we got to get this deal over the line because we've seen before that we haven't been able to get the deal over the line. And this summer, I think, especially the likes of Cesar Azpilicueta departing the club, I think that Kounde needs to come in. But yeah, I just want to see a more data-driven approach from Todd Boy. I think he's going to use that because at the end of the day, he wants to win the Premier League title this season. As unrealistic as Chelsea fans might think that is possible, that's his goal and that's his aspirations. I mean, this is a guy who has been in 3 of the past 5 World Series with his parent club, the LA Dodgers, which for anyone that's just wondering what the World Series is, it is the biggest, it's basically the Champions League final, 3 of the past 5 seasons. Over, mind you, a 162 game schedule, which is something that Chelsea need to, come in and be more consistent over a 38 game league and campaign. So there's some kind of parallels to that factor. And he wants to compete into the domestic trophies because he wants to create his own legacy at Chelsea. He doesn't want to be known as perhaps the same strategies and perhaps the same prototypes as our former regime has come in and delivered, of course, so many trophies, but they made some mistakes along that way. And I think, using a data-driven based approach, however statty or nerdy this might sound, I think, outgoings is something we need to focus on the fact because we're still finishing an average of 20 points off the Premier League title these past couple of seasons. I would love to close that gap to even 10, get over 80 points this season in the Premier League, and just try to hope that Liverpool and Manchester City kind of duke it out and only score, about 90, 92. So yeah, I want to win some domestic silverware. I really do. Continue to fight for the Champions League because I think this squad is built really well for what is it? They played 12 games, including the Champions League final. That's sort of we're sort of a cup team, and I think we thrive in those situations. But yeah, I would just focus on outgoings, I think, going forward, because that's something that I think there's a big hole in our squad at the moment. And once we can get rid of those players who have kind of formed a dark cloud over us these past couple of years, since I think we can finally look forward to the future, and hopefully bring guys in and continue to utilize the January transfer window, something we haven't been doing for a pretty long time.
Yeah, no, well said, and I really like the way you brought it all together. It's not always about trying to find a silver bullet solution with the one player to bring it in, because, like you said, for a number of seasons now, in fact, since we last won the Premier League, the composition, the strategy in our recruitment, all of those policies, they've been quite disjointed, and that's why, despite the silverware we've won in between, at times I feel like that's kind of masked some of those deficiencies on a domestic level, because, as you know, and those listening, and they've got their views, of course, to win the Premier League, it demonstrates consistent high level performance. Whereas obviously in those other competitions, they're phenomenally great teams, but you don't have to do it for a prolonged period of time, and that's where the I think the magic hat comes off.
Do you mind
sometimes.
if I jump in real quick, RJ?
Yeah, please.
Sorry to cut you off, but I think people look at the likes of us competing with the likes of Liverpool and the FA Cup and Carabao Cup finals, and the likes of Manchester City in our Premier League games, and they're so focused on those big matches that a lot of our deficiencies going up against lower tier opponents in the Premier League kind of go under the radar. And I think that's something we really need to address because, last season we were one of the worst teams in the table, especially at home. We got to fix our home record at Stamford Bridge. That's got to be a fortress once more. And yeah, you have to defeat all those teams who are coming up from the championship twice. It's a necessity if you really want to compete for the Premier League title. So we got to get rid of all of our deficiencies against lower tier opponents. We have to be consistent, especially I think in the attack and the midfield. I think that's something that Raheem Sterling's going to help us do because he's been a very consistent player over the whole span of the seasons for his time at Manchester City. But yeah, I think people look at the likes of those Liverpool and Manchester City matches, especially the Liverpool ones in the Carabao Cup and FA Cup final, and think, oh, we were a penalty shootout away from beating those likes of teams who have won the Champions League and have won the Premier League multiple times over this past couple of seasons. But it takes so much more than just a 90-minute session. It takes
and absolutely,
such
and
a
you know
long
what
time.
it is, Shane. I was going to say that it's not about us not being able to demonstrate that we can compete at the highest level with the best teams. That's not the issue. The issue is, can we do it 3 times a week against Southampton, against Wolves, against Everton consistently? And we've shown over the past few seasons that when the rubber hits the road, for one reason or another, if it's fatigue, if it's complacency, if it's just sheer bad luck at times, just due to a combination of injuries and suspensions, for one reason or another, we haven't been able to be ruthless and be able to put teams to the sword consistently. Because one week we'll win 3-0 against Leicester, 4-0 against Juventus, then lose 1-0 against Manchester United, who've been poor. So it's just one of those things where for next season, what you want is a culture to be instilled that it's just about relentless execution. Win. It doesn't matter about always playing beautifully because, as you know, performance doesn't always equal result.
I think, good teams turn losses into draws. Great teams turn draws into wins. I mean, what do we have? Something like 11 or 12 draws in the Premier League last season? Like, that's just
It's too
unacceptable.
many. Yeah.
And it's a lot of them when we go up 1-0 and lose the lead in something like the 85th minute. So we have to do a better job closing out games and strangle holding the opponents who we go up early against. And yeah, I just think there's a lot of deficiencies still in the squad that will prevent us from challenging for the Premier League title. But Bowley's ambitions are different. He wants to win now. Trust me. He doesn't want to just be in the Champions League, compete for the Champions League spots. Of course, that's one of his goals. To keep this club stable and of course keep them in the top four. God forbid. Especially, when you look at the likes of Tottenham Hotspur, who have done some serious business this transfer window. You look at the likes of, dare I say, Arsenal and Manchester United, who have done some serious business in this transfer window. We have to keep this top four, what's the word? Top four reliance, up and stable, because that's going to be Todd Bowley's first goal, especially finances for next season. That plays a huge role in it, but he wants to win, man. He's not here to finish in the top four. He wants to win trophies and win them now.
And you know what? If we have that mentality about Manchester City and Liverpool are just a cut above, and we want to be able to.
We're never going to get to the mountaintop.
We're never gonna catch them. First of all, it's reducing your expectations. It's okay to be not realistic, but it's okay to appreciate the current context. But equally, if we have that mindset that they're too far ahead, we're just trying to consolidate top four, that invites a dangerous scenario, because you've got the likes of Arsenal, Tottenham, Manchester United. They're not going to sit idly. They've been investing. They know that we are in a period of transition and we're there to be taken. So for us, I think it's absolutely imperative that people like Todd Bowley really invest that kind of mentality to Thomas Tuchel and the squad, to say, we've come here, we've spent a lot of money. We don't want you to drop your standards because it's just not good enough. Look what we're doing back home with the Dodgers, etc. So I think that's actually quite a positive thing that he's bringing, that, we want to win now mentality, not we want to think about the long term. The long term will take care of itself, provided that we can continue to be competitive in the short term. So there's no point in regressing to try to go forward. It's about incrementally progressing now and getting to your end game over time. So I don't know. Another question I had for you, because I'm conscious of your time, because you've been very generous with it. So we've spoken about a player that you're sort of happy to part ways with, but from your perspective, who's a player that you're keen to put the magnifying glass on and are excited about? And also, who's a player that you think's under the most spotlight this season to prove themselves?
I think your second question I'll answer first.
Yeah.
It's got to be Callum Hudson-Odoi. I mean, he said in all of his press conferences and interviews that he feels 100% once more, which he hasn't shown his former self in preseason so far. I know it's a scarcity of minutes to judge, but it's something, because there is a realistic possibility that if he stakes a claim at that left wing role, he can be a week in, week out starter for Chelsea Football Club, because Raheem Sterling can play the right as well as he can play on the left side. Thomas Tuchel likes the player of Callum Hudson-Odoi. He said that numerous times, but Callum has to prove himself. He does. The likes of Christian Pulisic, they have to prove themselves. Hakim Ziyech has to prove himself in a system where maybe he's a little bit more uncomfortable. All these attackers, Raheem Sterling has to prove himself. But yeah, I would say Callum Hudson-Odoi with the magnifying glass question, because there is a real possibility and there is a real chance for him to stake a claim in the side of that left wing spot.
I agree. Yep.
And there's the possibility that he can be a week in, week out star, like I said. And then your first question, talking about players that I like to see. What was it players I'd like to see a little bit more of? Or
it's more about who are you most excited about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hate to keep on harping about this player, but Conor Gallagher was Crystal Palace's best player last season in the Premier League. He's shown that he can play at a Premier League's proven standard level at the moment. He's shown that he can be the best player on the pitch against big six sides. And I think if he's utilized in his best role, he can be a real threat and real asset for Chelsea, especially in those cup matches and European ties and in the Premier League as well. with alongside the likes of Jorginho, alongside the likes of Kovacic, Conte, Mason Mount. I think there's something really special brewing here with Conor Gallagher, and I think Thomas Tuchel is a big fan of the player. He said time and time again how much of a fan he is, and I think
Mm.
that I'm just super excited for him to get going because he showed the little bit of time he got against Club America that he can show it in a Chelsea shirt. And I'm really interested to see if he fits into that starting lineup against Everton in our first game of the season. I think it's really possible that he does, especially if Tuchel, sticks with or changes to a 4-back formation.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, Conor Gallagher, and then another player I'm really interested to see, and think that should be getting some minutes is Ethan Apadu. I mean, this is a guy who I think can get 2,000 minutes for Chelsea this season, playing a kind of a hybrid role between center back and in the midfield. I think he can be an anchor. I think he can play in that middle of the center back three like he did tonight. And I'm just a big fan of Ethan Apadu. He's shown that he can go to loans, and he's had a bunch of experience with teams that have struggled, which have been valuable experiences for him. And I think that now this is his time at Chelsea to really prove his claim that he can be a Blues player once and for all after all these loans the past couple of years.
Yeah, no, well said. And just on Conor Gallagher, because obviously he's a hot topic. And again,
Yeah.
thanks for those who are joining the show. If you haven't had a chance, slap a like on the video. Feel free to check out Shane. I've got his handle and we'll read it all out at the end. But Shane runs his own fantastic podcast you can find on Spotify. But just in terms of Conor Gallagher, what I was saying the other night on another pod with a couple of friends was that hopefully what we see from him this season is that he gets used in his most dangerous positions in that sort of center attack in midfield box to box area. Because while I think he can do a job in a deeper lying midfield position like he's shown on a couple of occasions preseason, I'm of the view that you want to harness the ability, not hinder it. I want him to be able to venture forward without having the mindset of I need to remember my defensive responsibilities to drop back too much. So I think there is a special player there if we can unleash his talents to the full potential. From my perspective, a player that I'm looking forward to seeing just continue to build even more is both the real RJ, Reece James, because his season was cut short through the injuries and disruptions last season. But I think he's got some more ability to grow his game even further. But then there's also players from the other side, that I think deserve a bit of a spotlight shone on them is Kai Havertz. We know that he's someone that can play on the right, play a little bit deeper as a cam, but he's been deployed in a false nine and sometimes as an outright striker. So I do feel for him in some respects, but equally I want to see a bit more from him because he is a quality player. This guy's got a silky touch. He's got some special abilities on him. I just want to see that a bit more consistently from him this season because if he can find his form and he works out how to be that little bit more relentless with his consistency, I think he's going to help improve our squad quite dramatically. So he's someone I'm wanting a little bit more out of this season. What are your thoughts on Kai Havertz?
Yeah, I mean, I love the player. People have to remember this guy is still so young, but so talented. Um, I think that he fits Thomas Tuchel's system and Thomas Tuchel's idea of an attacker very well. And I think that he's going to form a very nice partnership, hopefully, with the likes of Raheem Sterling, because both of those players are very fluid in their movements of where they are geographically, location wise on the pitch, especially in that attack and third. Um, it's a big season for Kai because he hasn't quite shown yet that he can score over 10 goals in the Premier League in a season. And I think this year is his time to do that. I think he is going to be our number 9 as all indications point, going forward during this Premier League year, this Premier League campaign. This is a year that he can show that he is as much money as we paid for him, as worth as much money as we paid for him. I'm expecting him, dare I say, 15 Premier League goals from someone like Kai Havertz, especially if he's starting week in and week out. That's the type of level I think he can get to, and he's still so damn young. I'm really excited to see this player get minutes in and week out because I think he was starting to struggle a little bit, especially with the likes of a player I won't mention. and not being able to get consistent game time. I think that's something that he's going to really fruition and flower off of, being able to play week in and week out this season.
Brilliant, brilliant. And just to round it off, because I'm conscious we've almost hit 1 hour, a few quick fire questions for you.
Okay.
Based on this current squad composition, who will get more goals and assist contribution, Reece James or Ben Chilwell?
Reece James.
Okay. And this is no justification, that is quick fire.
Yeah.
Christian Pulisic or Raheem Sterling?
Raheem Sterling.
Mason Mount or Conor Gallagher?
Mason Mount. Close, but Mason Mount.
Mateo Kovacic and Jorginho?
Jorginho, because of penalties.
Okay. And if they're still here, Timo Werner and Hakim Ziyech?
Hakim Ziyech.
Okay, interesting. Make of that what you will. For those that are listening now, or those that have a chance to watch this later on, feel free to enter your answers into the comments bar. But again, I just want to say a huge thanks to Shane for agreeing to join me from his the special camp where he's on at the moment. So again, Shane, remind everybody what you're doing there, and as well plug your handle as well as the fantastic podcast you do, mate.
Yeah, well, first of all, RJ, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. So when I got that message from you, I jumped out of my seat because I was so excited to come talk to you tonight.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah, so right now I'm working on my craft, some might say. I'm kind of in the lab, progressing my skills with broadcasting, play-by-play, announcing, podcasting as I do on a semi-weekly basis. You can find that. The Lad for Matthew Harden podcast on all platforms. But yeah, I'm really passionate about sports broadcasting. I want to be on your guys' TV screens one day when you're watching the Premier League, and hopefully that will come to fruition these next couple of years, because I think it's so great nowadays that at a young age I can do all these things, and I can create my own content, and I can determine my own success in this world and in this industry. Because of social media, I think it's a great asset to have. So yeah, I'm just working on my craft at this camp over in Arizona before I hit university. One more year of high school.
Awesome.
I'm a young guy, but I love what I do, and hopefully I can do this for a living one day.
Wonderful. I love your passion, mate. And I think, again, I couldn't recommend you enough to people. So you're young, driven, motivated, insightful, and you've got a nice balanced attitude. And I love the respect that you have and all of the passion you bring as an aspiring broadcaster into that game. So I've no doubt that you will succeed in your long-term endeavors, my friend. And I hope that you remember us mere mortals along the way, those that gave you your chance or at least got to talk Chelsea with you, my friend. But until then,
you're my Frank Lampard. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice to you. And it's nice to say, how good is it that Koulibaly joins the squad and he's another 20th of June superstar like Frank Lampard, like Azmi Begovic, like RJ. No, yeah, exactly. No, in all
it's funny
mate,
too because sorry I had to cut you off. It's funny too because before you close, a couple weeks ago we were talking about some transfer targets, and the Miz just out of the blue brought up Koulibaly, and I'm really impressed by Bully because he accelerated this deal very well and very fast, and he means business. But yeah, you can go on now.
No, he means business, and hopefully Chelsea means business this season. Disappointing result against Charlotte, but again, perspective is important. There were some good things. Watch it back, review some of your individual players because, again, unfortunate outcome, but within it, you'll see that there were some positive things that I took away from it. I'm sure that once you let the dust settle, you'll also see those positive signs. But again, thanks very much, Shane. Thanks for those who've joined.
Cheers,
if you haven't had a chance, slap a like, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to follow the IFT. And until then, catch you later.
Cheers.